I'm seeing plenty of anti-missionary comments on this channel, and while I wanted to do a video about Matthew 6:33 and how that applies to my life, I wanted to address this comment about how Yeshua must have violated the Torah when he told a man to let the dead bury their own dead. But I'm going to debunk that right now. Now, there are two main viewpoints on this verse, and one of them is from the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. And I don't think they have any understanding of first century Jewish context or history or any of that, because they claim that Yeshua told this man that in light of him potentially waiting for his father to die instead of following him to be his disciple. And there's another interpretation in the Hebrew Roots movement where I'm seeing that this potentially has something to do more with an inheritance of some sort. I'm not sure what the merits of that claim are. I haven't really looked into it, but it doesn't seem to have any role in this either. We're going to read Luke chapter 9, verses 57 through 60, which say, "And it came to pass that as they went in the way, a certain man said unto him, Master, I will follow you wherever you go. And Yeshua said unto him, Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." So any person that's going to follow him should anticipate potential financial and economic instability. It says, "And he said unto another, Follow me. But he said, Master, suffer me first to go and bury my father. Yeshua said unto him, Let the dead bury their dead, but go thou and preach the kingdom of Yahweh." So we see immediately here that there's a prioritization of God's kingdom over familial obligations. And we're going to see that theme occur again in just a second. But first, let's visit the proof text of Acts chapter 5, verses 5 through 10, where we see that if you were a Jew in the first century who lived in Jerusalem or an area around that during the Second Temple era, you were buried on the exact day that you died. Just pause and read to see what happened to Ananias and his wife. And this is why people raised the possibility that this man to whom Yeshua spoke was waiting to bury his father on that very day before potentially following Yeshua. But in just a second, we will see why this interpretation is also inaccurate. But, and I'm putting another roadblock in, let's go to Luke chapter 14 first. And in verse 25 it says, "And there went great multitudes with him, and he turned and said unto them, If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple." And I know you Torah only Black Hebrew Israelites and anti-missionary folks who deny Yeshua are like watering in the mouth right now. Like your mouths are watering. You're like, well, can't the Jewish and Christian communities get around this idea that you're supposed to love your fellow as yourself? But Jesus said hate. So he's violating the Torah. Okay, again, this is another verse about priorities, but if you actually read Tanakh, what about that verse or the set of verses where after the golden calf incident, the Levites kill their own flesh and blood for their idolatry? Is that not hating your own flesh and blood relative to how much you love Yahweh? I'm just asking you a question. Let me get your thoughts jogging here and get you thinking. Was it not already a requirement in Tanakh to not love your family as much as you love Yahweh? "And whoever does not bear his own cross can't be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and count the cost?" You have got to count the cost before you decide to follow Yeshua, because it takes a lot of sacrifice. Have you done that? Whether he have sufficient to finish it, lest haply, after he hath laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish." Well, what about your walk of salvation? Do it from start to finish. Do it from the moment you convert until the moment that you are dead. Or what king going to make war against another king sitteth not down first and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that cometh against him with 20,000? So that's just the harsh reality. Is the king not going to take advice and consider how much it's going to take to defeat other armies? This is why he says in verse 33, "Forsake everything that you have, because that's what it takes to be my disciple." Here's the smoking gun proof that Yeshua was not violating the 5th commandment by doing any of this. In the Jerusalem Talmud, we see an account that when someone died who was a wealthy Jew, they were placed in a burial cave, their body at least. And when they wasted away, their bones were collected and placed into ossuaries a year later. What that means is that there was a first burial and then there was a second burial. So this has historically been my interpretation, and there are other websites and sources that seem to corroborate this. When Yeshua said, "Let the dead bury their own dead," he was referring to 2 different kinds of dead in the tomb: the bones of the deceased that had already been neatly placed in the ossuaries, and the fathers who had yet to be reburied. So when he says, "Let the dead bury their own dead," he's basically saying, let the dead relatives bury his father, who is also dead. Yeshua used hyperbole to illustrate how serious of a thing it was to follow him. Now, rabbinic sources add in that the decomposition of the flesh in this process atoned for the sins of the dead person. And it's highly possible that Yeshua was trying to target this kind of theology in that process as well. So was he suggesting that only a sinner would bury their dead? Not so. All he was telling the man was to skip his second burial ritual because it was an unnecessary tradition. To add to the proof that this was a real thing, Tractate Semachot 12:3 says, "Any dead person for whom one rends the garments on his death, one also rends for him when his bones are gathered. For a dead person for whom one may not baste the edge of his garments on his death, one may not baste them when his bones are gathered." This tradition is referred to as keriah, where one would tear their clothing in order to mourn for a dead relative. And there are examples of this in the Tanakh, including with King David, which I will not get to today. So, Yeshua is not saying, let only the spiritually dead people who don't know Yahweh bury the physically dead people. Rather, he is telling this man to forego his second burial ritual, even if it brings great shame upon him from his family, because this is an instance or an illustration of what it would mean to hate your family in order to be his disciple.